Sawadee good morning everyone. I'm Honey Cholapansa Darula, welcoming our audience joining us both on Zoom and Facebook Live to our webinar series today, and that's titled Germaphobic is a New Normal, Reorienting Your Hotel Business to Gain Trust from Health Concerning Clients. This is a webinar series for incentive travel brought to you by Site Thailand in association with TICA and supported by TCEP. So every other Friday, we bring you an in-depth discussion revolving around post-COVID-19 incentive travel. Today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, is rather interesting as we take a look on how the hotel industry, which is getting back to business after a hiatus in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, is ready to reconnect and restore confidence among health-conscious clients and encourage everyone to travel again. Before all that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the Vice President, Events and Education of Site Thailand Chapter, Mr. Ravi Gandlani, to deliver a few words of welcome. Mr. Ravi.
Hi, and a very good morning to everyone. On behalf of Site Thailand, I would like to welcome you to our third Site Talk. My name is Ravi, and I'm the Vice President of Events and Education for Site Thailand. In this third edition of Site Talk, the topic is Germaphobia is a new normal. This was one of the popular topics in the survey that we had conducted earlier on. I believe in today's world, what we call the new normal is measurements that we have in place. Like, for example, we are all used to wearing face masks, having our temperatures checked whenever we go in and out of a place, have to scan QR codes when we enter malls or establishments, and washing your hands on a regular basis. But what we have to realize is sometimes this is not enough. And as a person in the hospitality industry, what we get first question from the clients nowadays is, what measurements do you have in place? What are you doing to gain trust? And what are you measurements that you have put in place to make sure that our guests feel safe and trust the hotel? So that's why we have three wonderful panelists joining us today, and I would like to thank them for being with us today. Before we start, I would also like to thank our strategic partner, TCEP, who are a big supporter for Site Thailand on many of the activities. Another partner that we work with a lot for Site Thailand is TICA, who support us on the activities that we do as well. So a big thank you to both of you. Site Thailand also has 2 more talks coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that as well. Without further ado, I would like to pass it back to Kunhani so she can start the session. I hope you enjoy and have a great Friday as well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Ravi. And as you all are aware, we have 3 panelists joining us this morning who will be sharing their valuable insights with you. Our first speaker is a seasoned hotelier with over 20 years of experience in Asia Pacific. He is currently the Cluster General Manager of Novotel Bangkok Sukhumvit 20 and Ibis Styles Bangkok Silom, and also Area General Manager Thailand for Mid-Scale and Economy Hotels with Accor Thailand, Mr. Benjamin Craig. Good morning.
Good morning.
And our next speaker is a visionary leader from Australia's business events industry, Mr. Andrew Hebo, Chief Executive Officer or CEO of the Association of Australian Convention Bureau. Good morning. And our third speaker is a celebrated event planner known for creating unforgettable experiences for clients, Mr. Richard Su, Chief Guru at Creative Marketing, Meeting and Exhibition Planners of Singapore. Morning.
Morning, everybody. Sawadee.
Sawadee ka. Thank you very much for joining us. In today's webinar, aside from the conversation with experts, there are a couple of polls. We like you to share your opinions with us. So I'll let you know when the polls are coming up. But what you need to do is click on the poll menu at the bottom of the screen. It's at the bottom of the screen, and you can vote to choose your answer. We'll tell you the results of the polls as well. Also, we have Q&A coming up later after the discussion is over. So do feel free to post your questions anytime at the Q&A box. The Q&A box is also there at the bottom of the screen on the menu bar. Okay, so I guess we are ready. Let's begin with a warm-up poll, shall we? The first question: will your decision to attend an event be determined by the hygiene SOPs or standard operation procedures put in place by the venue? Once again, this is a question. Will your decision to attend an event be determined by the hygiene SOPs put in place by the venue? So it's a yes or no answer. Please do vote. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask the opinions of our speakers on this question. What if there were declines? So gentlemen, can you briefly share your thoughts on this very first warm-up poll? Let me begin with Kun Richard.
Yes and no. Yes, because it's a prerequisite, I think, for any establishment to have safety procedures in place. But no, because I would be looking for more the reason for attending the event as well. So two things.
All right. And Andrew.
Look, I think this is an absolutely great question to start. And I know we'll talk about a little bit more further down the track, but I really think it's important to think about the client and being in the client's shoes and what their thinking process will be. From a supply chain perspective, hotels and venues, there is only so much of the environment that we can control. And I think that involves those COVID safe hygiene practices. But there are some other risks that I think a client is exposed to that we'll be exploring over the course of our economies opening up again. So that question really sort of sparks that conversation maybe a bit later in the webinar.
Kun Benjamin.
Yeah, good morning. I think similar to the other panelists, the standard operating procedures are really, really important, but they're not the only single piece of information that clients will take. And I know when we've gone through our recent initiatives towards SHA certification at my hotel and the Accor AllSafe program, we know that a lot of the standard operating procedures we were doing in international hotels are already in place. We've just elevated them and implemented them in a slightly different way. So I think they're important, but not the only point.
Okay, let's have a look at what the audience think as per this question. Let me just have a quick look. Is it a yes? Oh, it's 96% of the audience answering yes to this question. Okay, so that was a nice warm-up. How about another poll before the discussion begins? So here's a question. What's the greatest challenge in reconnecting with the business events market? What's the greatest challenge in reconnecting with the business events market? Communication with your clients? Is that the one? Communicating your readiness to the market? Finding extra resources to meet the new normal standard? Reskilling the team to be compatible with the new normal? Or convincing clients to travel to create events again? So do pick your choice, pick your answers, and actually one answer that is, will come to the results in a short while. All right, so here we go with the discussions beginning right now. Hotels, just like any business establishment around the world, are implementing the many measures and procedures to restore customers' confidence while at the premises, like Benjamin did mention a little while ago. So wherever you go, you'll see the cleaning team stepping up, working harder to ensure that the place is germs-free and that it's also safe. But these efforts will need plenty of resources. It's more cost, manpower, more training, and the capacity of the event venues and hotels have been reduced significantly as well. And that translates, I believe, into higher expenses with lower income. And that could be a perfect nightmare for some hotel and venue businesses. So amidst the uncertainty of the coronavirus pandemic, what's the current situation when it comes to the hotels and venue businesses? And how can business sustain in this challenging time? Let me begin by asking Kun Benjamin.
Thank you, Kunhani. Look, I think there's always a delicate balance between managing the requirement for additional resources or additional services and facilities, and this is not unlike that. However, we are definitely operating in a situation with reduced meetings and events revenue in the short to medium term. So there are some areas that we need to focus on. But again, linking back to what I mentioned earlier, in our hotel and across a lot of our properties, we've always had a lot of these important systems, cleanliness, hygiene standards and operating procedures in place. So what we're seeing is we're changing the way that we're doing some things and definitely elevating some areas with an increased focus, because we do need to, I suppose, overtly make all of our customers aware of things like cleaning, hygiene, and the protocols around checking in and checking out of venues. But I think overall it can be managed. Definitely the short to medium term will be the biggest challenge as the business starts ramping up. My hotel, Novotel Bangkok Sukhumvit 20, has been lucky as one of the fortunate properties it has maintained and operated throughout the entire duration of this pandemic. However, from that, we are already seeing some early indications of business coming back, definitely, of course, from the domestic segment. So we welcome it.
Okay. And Mr. Andrew, how can we make this work for, the hotel and the venue business? What's the challenge that you see?
Look, it's a big question being asked here in Australia, is whose responsibility and who foots the bill. I think it's a very important one. I hate to sound like Switzerland on this, but I do think there's a shared responsibility here. I think at the end of the day, while the venues need to manage greater COVID safe procedures and responsibilities, and there is potentially the need of bringing in additional equipment, we have to understand, after enduring periods of simply not being open and not earning any revenue, that's just not a cost that the venues can 100% bear. So I think in the short term, clients will need to face the fact that in the short to medium term, business events will be slightly more expensive, in my view, to run, and that's also to provide that safety and security for their attendees, which they're responsible for. So just like any other costs that a venue would bear, some of that will need to be passed on to the client in the short to medium term. Look, being a little bit biased as well, I also think working with your bureau is quite important. The bureaus have a long pipeline of business, and that's one of the good things about the business events industry, as well as one of the things that goes against us. I think looking forward, we need our governments to give us some surety around and understanding that you can't just open business tomorrow and business events will occur the day after. We need a lead time so that these events can be managed and planned for. And in Australia's circumstance, we've got our next big period coming up or approaching in September through to November. So if the government here in Australia doesn't give us that lead time, we'll miss that last period of peak business before the end of the year. And then there'll be more of a reliance on government to subsidise the industry, which is not a good outcome from them either. And look, my final point is always make decisions on evidence. I'm a little bit of have become a little bit of a data nerd and research nerd. And there's a lot of information everywhere. From a global perspective, I mean, Site is looking at a lot of client sentiment, behaviour as well as from an association's perspective. You can go to ICA or your other national bodies that are doing research at the moment. We're doing a few little studies and surveys of the corporate sector here in Australia and some from the association sector as well. We're finding the response is quite different from both markets. So I always definitely go back to evidence and research and base your decisions there.
I see. Richard, what are your thoughts, and what will be the ideal spot at the moment to meet buyers' expectations?
I think we have to look at all these new procedures and process as a must-have, but we do not have to look at it as an expenditure alone, but as an investment in terms of how it can boost end-user confidence in your product and services, which then turn into a brand-building exercise. So it's not a question of how hospitality business can sustain this additional expenditure, but more on how to maximize returns on this investment. And this returns itself can sustain that expenditure. To me, that is the ideal spot where you use whatever you're doing to market your product so that it builds back and it maximizes your return on marketing investment. Yeah.
I see. Now, let me get back to Kun Benjamin. Cleanliness. So we're talking about germophobia, which is a new normal. But cleanliness, as we all know, is nothing new for the hotel business, but it's just that the clients are being extra super sensitive to hygiene right now. How strictly are COVID safety measures for business events applied at your hotels at the Echo Group in a time when germophobia, like I mentioned, is something which has become a new normal?
Yeah, look, thank you, Kunhani. At our hotel, so we're part of the Accor Group, and we've recently released information about our global program, which is called Accor AllSafe. My property's gone through the internal certification process, and we've currently completed that. As we were operating, we did fast track and make sure we're doing that. With relation to how strict it is, as we've seen this situation unfold over the last few months, we've been constantly evolving what we've been doing at a hotel level. So we do already have a very high level of hygiene. We've been HACCP certified from a food and hygiene standard perspective for quite some time. But what we have seen is, and somebody brought up a really good point, previously, a lot of cleanliness has been done in the background. It might have been done in night shift or done when guests weren't present. We've almost flipped that completely around, and you need to have a real overt feeling and give the guests the satisfaction that the cleanliness and hygiene is happening. There's a combination of things like seals and cleanliness, but a large amount of that is the visuals of how we're actually managing that. There's a lot of additional signage that's going to go up. But overall, the process, and with the Accor AllSafe program, it is really, really important to make sure that all of our customers and clients are feeling satisfied from the point that they arrive at the hotel until their departure point. And with conferencing events, as they start to ramp up and scale up, and the restrictions are eased in all of the countries, it's really important that when you're welcoming large groups of people, 10, 20, my conference facilities can take up to 1,000 people, we need to make sure we've got all the systems and structures up in place to give them the levels of reassurance. And with the AllSafe program, we also have a third-party certification process. So not only do we independently are awarded that certification, but then very shortly we'll get a third-party official certification, which also validates that, no differently to us and with our HACCP compliance and requirements.
So you're very ready to welcome back the business events to your hotels.
Yeah, definitely. But there are a lot more changes that do need to continue to be made. And I don't think it's going to stop now. I think there will be an evolution process with this, and it will continue to change. Some things might naturally fall away, and then other elements might be added up.
Okay. Andrew, you're also the coordinator of Safety and Hygiene Subcommittee. So what are the set of guidelines adapted and used in Australia right now that might be helpful for other countries to learn from?
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario here in Australia, and I guess if I can paint a picture, probably tomorrow actually marks 3 months since the business events industry was shut down by the Australian government. But I guess we've got two levels working within Australia at this point in time. We've got the federal government, and we've also got state governments, and so collectively the business events industry has come together under the Business Events Council of Australia, peak body, and that organisation represents the convention centres, it represents the associations, PCOs, the exhibition sector, and the training component of the business events industry here in Australia. And our main target is the federal government. And so what the Australian government did was create a national cabinet where they make decisions around how to shut down or open up the economy based on advice from the chief medical officers. So together we're still in the planning phase, but we've provided a very high set of principles that would essentially form the framework of COVID safe guidelines at a lower level, either within different states or within venues and hotels as well. And so while we're trying to advocate to the federal government to allow the economy to open up, the decisions being made around opening the economy are being done at a state level, which does make it quite confusing, but it's all based on the amount of risk within the large country of Australia and the population spread, and some parts of Australia have been hit harder than others. So we're seeing at the moment different states opening up at different speeds and allowing events of different sizes, even with some state borders still being closed at this point in time. So it's a little bit of a complex system. We would much have preferred the opening of the economy to happen at the same speed as the close down, all at the same time and same level. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So those guidelines that we've prepared, they're available on our Business Events Council.org.au site, and anyone can go and have a look at those high-level principles. But we're putting those forward as an opportunity for the Australian business event sector to leverage off and promote best practice.
Richard, what's the case in Singapore?
Sorry?
What's the case in Singapore?
I'm actually from Malaysia.
Oh, sorry. Malaysia.
Yeah, but that's okay. I can relate to you about what's happening in Malaysia. I'm part of the Business Events Council in Malaysia as well. And just as Andrew is doing, we are actually speaking with the government on the SOPs that needs to be in place for events to start happening. And I think we can reach a decision hopefully by next week. But what we are looking at is really looking at a minimum size of group that with minimum risk exposure. And I think that's really important. But on the event side, as an event organizer, I think what's really important is to humanize that experience instead of just having a straight SOP, because it's very clinical and very cold. So as an event organizer, I will do that part, but I will also help with the SOPs to make sure that the risk of transmission is lower.
Okay. All right. Before we move on, let's take a quick check at the results of our second poll. Let me see. And the results of the poll to the question, what's the greatest challenge in reconnecting with business events market? Most of our audience chose the last choice, which is convince the client to travel or create events again. And that was about 57% from the respondents, from the audience. Okay, so let's get into the client's shoes now. I'd like to bring up another poll. As a traveler, here's a question. As a traveler, what will make you feel confident when you have to make a trip to a business event again during this pandemic? As a traveler, what will make you feel confident when you have to make a trip to a business event again during the pandemic? And there are a couple of choices. The hotel venue seems safe enough and capable of coping with the sanitary requirements. The organizer has to make me feel confident with their plan. The government at the destination copes with the situation well enough. And if there will be too many people from too many countries, I am still not ready to go. And the last choice is I will not travel until I have been vaccinated properly. So ladies and gentlemen, do kindly vote. I'd also like our experts to share what they think about this question before we go ahead. So Richard from Malaysia.
Yeah, I think I will move closer to B, which is the organizer has to make me feel confident with their plan. Because to me, each customer is very different, their concerns are very different. And as long as the organizer are taking steps to add on to whatever SOPs the destination or the venue is already giving and secure my sense of well-being, then I will attend the event. So it would be B for me.
Kun Benjamin.
Yeah, look, I think this is it would be great if there's a multiple choice. I suppose I'm not trying to sit in the fence, but I think there's a combination of, similar to what Andrew mentioned, as even in Thailand, we've got different provinces, different districts, different areas that are opening up in different times, as well as we're a market that does depend a lot on international markets inbound. So a big part of that step will literally be Thailand doing the great job that they currently have in controlling the virus and giving that confidence out to other inbound markets, as well as uplift continues and airlines start to be able to fly in. That will be a big part. But I agree, and to Richard's point, I think it's important to have all of those systems in place, but to make sure we've got that humanised element and that soft touch, which hospitality is so well known for, because we still need to keep that element that's so important for meetings and events.
Andrew? And Andrew, what's your choice? Oh, we lost Andrew. I think there is a connection problem. Are you back? Are you able to reconnect with us, Andrew? Andrew is joining us from Australia. I think there's a bit of a problem there. Anyways, let me have a look at the poll results from the audience. Let me see what the audience has voted. Okay, so the audience says the government at the destination copes with the situation well enough. So they voted for this choice, 33%. Oh, Andrew, are you back with us?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I disappeared for a second.
Never mind, you're back. Would you like to share your thoughts before we go ahead to the next question?
The only thing that I wanted to add outside of being the new standard is I think it's really important to get an insight into the sort of the corporate or the government travel policies and the policies around being allowed to attend. So sometimes it's not up to the individual traveller in a business events context. There could be other policies at play. I think there's a little bit of work that could be done in more sort of investigative work around surveying organisations around what those policies might look like, because I think they trump the. I know even I'm jumping out of my skin to attend an in-person event in the near future, but if I worked for an organisation, local government or other, I'd have to consider what I'm allowed to do as an employee. So I think I would love to see more research being done in that space.
I see. For me, I would choose more than one choice. I would say 1, 2, and 3. Everything. But I know it's a challenging time. If we can all work together collectively, I'm sure that we can win back customers' confidence and have them travel, and feel safe again.